Martyn. A little bit full of a cold, but this time of year it always happens. But otherwise, I'm in an extremely good mood, as I'm sure you already know.
Is that because you catch the cold from watching them big old men wrestling?
Them big those slippery wrestlers, yeah, they got a bit too close. That's me that lurgy, but no.
Was it the Valvinus cold? Is it the Valvinus flu?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm not sure I want that. I don't think I want that strain of the common cold. I don't know where Valvinus has been, but no, it was more
Nobody wants that.
It was Cody Rhodes-itis I've got.
Nobody wants that. That's the next Netflix documentary waiting to happen. Right, before we get stuck in, I would like to remind everyone about our competition that we have going on at the moment. We have a David Beckham signed Real Madrid shirt. It's quite fitting, a former England captain, going off today's topic. But yes, all the details are on our social media, so please go and check that out and be in with a chance of winning some legendary signed memorabilia. Right, big news was broken, making our most recent episode totally irrelevant, less than 24 hours after it was posted. Where we spoke about speculating the England manager, and the FA have gone and done us over. And it has been announced Thomas Tuchel is the next England manager. Scott, being a former Chelsea manager and a Chelsea man yourself, what's your initial reaction?
I'm extremely happy about this decision. I don't know if this is on podcast record of my thoughts on this as a potential option. It may well be somewhere in our group chat, but I genuinely can't think of a better person to come in and manage England. We'll get into the ins and outs of why, but my initial reaction is we finally first manager I can honestly put my hand on my heart saying first England manager in my lifetime. We've genuinely got a top level world-class manager, which has seemingly been done with we finally decided enough's enough and we need some silverware.
Maybe Capello was that as well.
Yeah, I think maybe at the time, I probably didn't really know enough about him I'd heard of his name, but I guess I don't think I analysed football the way I do now when we hired Capello.
Plus, he hadn't been in England at all previously either, so no one had seen him really.
Yeah,
like as closely as we would. What's my initial reaction?
Yeah, interested to get your thoughts. I know Luke and Liam's thoughts. I'm just not 100% sure where you stand on this yet.
Well, I don't know yet. What I think is that have the FA gone out and got the best available manager who is not currently tied down to any other contract? And the answer is yes. But my overriding fear, and we'll get onto this now, not fear, but I just really would like an English manager to be the manager of England. And I think I don't want it to come across as like you don't want to accept anybody else. It doesn't matter.
Xenophobe.
It's nothing to do with the German thing, because everyone's been talking about Pep, and it doesn't square that circle either for me. It doesn't matter if he's from Germany, Wales, Timbuktu, Zimbabwe. I don't care. They have to be English to manage England for me.
Yeah,
that it makes there's no asterisks, if you will, if we were to go on and win something. It's a whole more identity of the country if it is done by an English manager. Now, that's been the biggest reaction, is because he's German. Does it matter to you? Let's take the previous love for Tuchel out of it. A German manager being manager of England, does that matter to you?
No, and do you know what the interesting thing is? I think we, as Brits, we're somewhat unique in this, and I don't think this dynamic that we think we have with Germany. I think if you asked a German, I don't think it's there for them. I think we conflate the football and political. You go back to First and Second World Wars. This is where it all stems from these events, and naturally, the fact that we beat Germany to win our only World Cup probably plays into it as well. But I think there's this narrative that we like to run with that, the Germans are our enemies. And maybe they were 80 years ago, but a lot's changed since then. And even if you just wanted to keep it strictly football, Germans don't care about England either. Their big rival is the Netherlands. That's all they're asked about. They don't care about beating England. It's just another game for them. So I feel like this is very much a one-sided, not a one-sided rivalry in the sense that one team always wins, but one-sided in that there's only one side that really cares.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand why people react the way that they do, but to me personally, it's the fact that he's German. He's no different than if he was Brazilian or. It actually would be worse if he was Argentinian because I feel like there's a football rivalry there deeper than the one that we have with Germany. I feel like that would be a bit more like, ooh, not sure about that one.
That sort of brings me on to the next point is that, let's say when Southgate announced he was stepping down, there was maybe more available managers than there are now. Pochettino being one of them. So the FA have chucked Carsley in, and then is that have they acted appropriately and still got the best manager available? Do you think? Is he the right choice, even if Eddie Howe wasn't in a job, who I understand wasn't even approached? I believe there was talks with Pep about a summer takeover, and I think there was also an approach to Ancelotti in the summer as well. But nothing about Pochettino, who's gone on to take the USA job.
Yeah.
Are you still of the impression that Tuchel is the man and he's probably the best one we could get right now?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Where I think there is a merit for a discussion is Tuchel, when you've got Pep as an option on the table and you end up with Tuchel, that's somewhere I can maybe understand people thinking, I didn't really fancy that because we could have had Guardiola. But really, that was always going to be a difficult sell to him. I think I think it sort of breaks the mold somewhat of a traditional Pep team who is ready built to win, which England you could argue maybe in some ways is, but there's work to be done to get them over the line. And then you look at me, could you have gone with Ancelotti? If we'd have got Ancelotti, I'd have probably been as happy. I hold Carlo Ancelotti in very, very high regard. I think I've said for years there's 4 world-class managers who are currently active. You've got Pep, you've got Klopp, you've got Tuchel, and you've got Ancelotti. I've said that for a long time. So yeah, I think when you look at who realistically is on the table, I don't know if there's any other names that you could really throw into the hat that is realistic. I mean, Klopp may have been there for the taking as well. Another German, but how would that have been received? Really, like he's much more of a media favorite. That would have been an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other names you'd throw in, but I actually think with who's there, I don't really see how we could have done any better than what we've done.
That's where I'm sitting at the moment. I think we've got a really, really good manager. And my only negative is that he's not English. The rest of it will be fine. It doesn't stop me supporting England. So, long story short, it doesn't matter who's at the helm. It's just, it's never going to sit right with me, like it never did with Sven. Although we was a lot younger and we didn't really know
You didn't really care the same, did you? It was like
nah, we didn't. Capello never looked like an England manager to me, and he
no.
And then we had that Dutch guy, Steve McLaren, who did it for a bit.
I'll tell you what, though, I think one way to look at it is if an English manager had Tuchel's CV, we'd be falling over ourselves to get hold of him. If you look at the
100%.
record and the trophies that he's won,
Yeah.
If there's an English flag next to his profile on the fucking UEFA website or whatever, we'd be fucking creaming ourselves over it. So I think that's people who are on this fence of the German thing's a big problem. Just look at his track record, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But if an English guy had this CV, we'd be seeing this as a major coup for the FA.
So, that brings me on to the next point I wanted to make, which was what is good about Tuchel. And by all accounts, he loved his time in England. He loved London. I think he still lives there most of the time. Other than, I
Yeah.
mean, he took the Bayern job last year, but still kept his residency in London.
Yeah.
So he has bought into British culture and did love it here. What
Yeah.
else? So as a fan who he's led your team to the ultimate success, really,
Yeah.
other than a Premier League trophy. But I mean, what is good about Tuchel? What do you think England fans will see from that may have come over from his Chelsea time and Bayern Munich time?
Yeah, I'm going to try and do this without my Chelsea glasses on because you know me, I can wax lyrical about Thomas Tuchel forever, and he certainly contends with Mourinho for my all-time favorite Chelsea manager. I think he's up
Wow.
there with he's not just what he achieved, but how he handled our very rocky situation with the UK government at the time. I think a lot of Chelsea fans hold him very highly for that and how he carried himself. He could have just fucked off and just said, "I don't need this," but he didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
He actually went the opposite way and sort of became that siege. But yeah, anyway, I'll try and look at this as just as objectively as a football fan. One thing that I think he's going to bring that we've lacked badly, well, we've lacked greatly in recent tournaments is in-game management. Something that I saw Thomas Tuchel do time and again as a Chelsea fan is react to what is going on in front of him and making the necessary adjustments. So a big example is Champions League final against Man City. We lost Thiago Silva at, I don't know. I think it was a bit way through the first half, if I remember rightly. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
sort of late on in the game. And Thiago Silva, I mean, even at 40 years old, he was putting up great performances. But this was Thiago Silva at 36 or 7. Like, you could argue almost in his prime. Easily our best centre half coming up against, what I would consider the best Man City team,
Yeah.
the best iteration of Pep City team. And he was able to adjust to that, massive loss and adjust tactically. And he set up tactically it was a masterclass anyway. If you go back and watch that game, coupled with a Kante absolute well-beaten performance, but his in-game management, he will respond correctly. He's not afraid to hook players who aren't performing, and he's not afraid to go to plans B, C, and D if plan A doesn't work.
Well,
So I think that's going to be somewhere that we'll see a big improvement is in-game
that's
management when we're on the back foot.
yeah, that's I was going to say that was the big criticism leveled at Southgate, weren't it? Is that he had no in-game management. It was plan A, and hope that our
Yeah,
players are better than theirs.
yeah. Something that there's another point, but I think this actually may fall under a negative. So I'll put a pin in that until we maybe get to talking about the potential drawbacks of Tuchel. Um, the other big plus for Thomas Tuchel is his record in big games against big teams. His record against the top six or the big six in England was very good. He beat Ancelotti's Real Madrid over 2 legs in 2021, and in 2022 that and the performance that we put in under Tuchel against Real Madrid the year after, we went to the Bernabeu and I think we won 3-2 in the end. And it was just that late Benzema Rodrigo goal that knocked us out on away goals.
Ah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and that performance, he took Ancelotti to school. He absolutely. I've genuinely never seen Chelsea play as well, particularly away from home, as we did that day. It was unbelievable. I've never seen Chelsea be that, and particularly we look like the much superior team against Madrid that had Modric, Benzema, Vinicius,
Well,
all the superstars.
I was looking at his
I think,
record in cups, because essentially that's what you do as an England manager. You play cup competitions.
yeah,
A German Cup with Dortmund, obviously the
yeah,
Champions League, and then the Super Cup and Club Winners' Cup with Chelsea.
yeah,
Everything with PSG. Well, a league with PSG and Bayern Munich, but also the domestic treble with PSG that year in
yeah,
the I can't think of the cup names, but basically their version of the FA Cup and League Cup.
yeah,
So cup competitions is where he shines. So I'm not
yeah,
I'm not pinning my hopes on a Nations League trophy with him, but maybe I'll take a World Cup instead.
yeah. But even in the areas where perhaps there isn't a trophy to pin next to it, he's the only guy who's ever took PSG to a final. PSG, it's well documented their approach to trying to take over and dominate football by signing all the biggest superstars, and they never got close until Thomas Tuchel was there, and they came up marginally short against a very good Bayern Munich team. And also, you could think up until the 2022 Champions League, I think he took Chelsea to every cup final that was available. FA, Carabao, Champions League. Won the most important one, thankfully. But
Yeah.
again, really super fine margins. He was a fuck. I can't. There's a really funny terminology for something really narrow, but I can't remember what it's called. But he was within an arse hair of winning the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup against Liverpool because of Lukaku VAR offside. So yeah, his success in cup competition is not just winning, but taking teams who've never been to that stage before is very good as well. And I guess that speaks into it is that he's been brought in to basically do what Southgate couldn't, which is take us over that line. And he's got a very good track record of doing that.
So, in what's the word? With the argument of fairness, now let's talk about what is not good about Tuchel. Now, from my point of view, he famously doesn't play well with others. It's his way or the highway. Now, you're right about him being at Chelsea through a really, really sticky time with all the sanctions and stuff against Abramovich and him taking over at a really dark time and coming out with the Champions League at this point. But he doesn't do well with a big staff around him or being told what to do from up above or people going behind his back for telling him who to sign. Obviously, that won't be the case here, but there is the England setup is massive. Like Liam was saying, it's one of the biggest jobs in football after probably Man United. In my opinion, I believe it's the most important role in this country after Prime Minister in terms of eyes on and pressure and everything that comes at you. You've got Prime Minister and then you've got like Keir Starmer and Gareth Southgate next to
it's hard to argue when you think about the level of scrutiny on your job. Eyes on, pressure. I agree. I think he's spot on with that.
So negatives then. He's got to accommodate a large group of very talented players and a large backroom staff and in general interfering press in a way that Gareth Southgate did all that very well. Now, what happened on the pitch and the rest of it, how we finished up with tournaments aside, Gareth Southgate did everything else fantastically, in my opinion. So,
I agree.
Do you think Tuchel can do that? Do you think there's any causes for concern on the horizon with it being just an 18-month contract as well? Do you think that's even better?
I think maybe that's the contract length. First of all, I think that is very telling in that he's been brought in to do a job, like win us the World Cup. Like, because his contract ends after the World Cup, so what else is he there for? Win us some. That like his job is to come in and win the World Cup. That's literally all it is. So I think if they've gone into it on the understanding that look, this is I mean, I'm sure if he does win the World Cup, we'll all be begging him to stay for the Euros and stay for another World Cup. Of course we will. That's just how it goes. But I feel like they've entered this with a somewhat, maybe this is a good thing given his character. It's a transactional thing. We give you X, bring us home this. We don't need to have some sort of holistic guy to bring the country together nonsense. I say nonsense. It was like what I agree with you that Southgate did that side of his job very well. But I think this is where I think we've sort of gone past that point now. We need someone to come in and do the next bit. But in terms of, I think he will be. He's a very charming guy, Thomas Tuchel. He gets people on his side. He comes when you first hire him, you think he's going to be this fiery hothead guy, and he's actually, especially in media interactions, he's really not. I've noticed it took quite a lot for him to lose his rag with media. I never actually saw him lose, not in the way that Klopp does and the way that Ange does. He's not like a petulant, arsey bastard. The only time I ever saw him lose his rag was against Anthony Taylor of all people. Again, that's why he's proper Chelsea and why he's up there for me.
Right.
Anthony Taylor. But yeah, I think he was one of the big reasons around him leaving Chelsea, just for this context, was he didn't like that they wanted him involved in this big team of process. Like they didn't. Was quite often came out and said, "Just want to coach the team. You give me players all you want. I don't really care who you sign, where you sign. Just give me the players, and I like to coach. That's my thing." So if that's the setup that they've agreed, that we'll handle all the other bits and you just coach the players, it'll be fine. But he's a character that's fallen out with a lot of people on his track record. So that is
Yeah.
something for us to watch out for. I think if there's politics involved with the FA, I don't think he'll mesh very well with that.
Well, that was going to be my other point, is that was one of his big gripes. Even quite early on at PSG, he said that it feels like I'm more of a politician here than a football manager. And as I was saying about the importance of this job to the country, he's going to be right up there in terms of that them sort of politics. And I think Southgate did well to avoid that or sidestep it really quite in a quite British manner. Like, oh,
you know what I think he did? Yeah, but you know what I think he did? I think he sort of was quite expert at that. I don't think he sidestepped it, but I think he almost became part of it without you noticing. You didn't,
yeah.
You didn't like think, oh, he's a slimy little politician. I mean, he got the yes man accusations, what every England manager has in history, I think. So I think that's lost a lot of weight now. But I think he did well at sort of like he became part of that system without you really noticing, like chameleoned it. I thought he did really well at that. Whereas Tuchel,
I agree.
He's a square peg in a round hole for that, I think, Thomas Tuchel.
So I would like to read you something that a critic who has read it. I haven't read. I didn't even know he had a biography of Thomas Tuchel. His biography is titled Rule Breaker. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't. No, I didn't know it existed, but I may give that a read. Actually, I'd be quite interested.
But this is a critic's view. This isn't from today or yesterday or anything like that. It's from a while back when it was first released. This is what his overarching view of Thomas Tuchel was as a coach. The guy is flawed, but undoubtedly one of the top 5 coaches in the world, possibly the number 1 knockout match tactician. But a great coach doesn't make a great manager, and therein lies the Tuchel story. He's terrible with emotions, and his people skills leave a lot to be desired. Not initially, he has effortless play energy and makes a wonderful first impression. Great small talk, stimulating ideas, and innovative coaching sessions. But once things get serious, he's over-demanding. Players accept it at first because his insight is unquestionable and he leads by example, demanding just as much of himself as anyone else. Players know he's going to get them results and make them better. Early on, they see an opportunity to achieve wonderful things in their careers, but eventually, the draining effects are too much. He's exhausting. One by one, they gradually slip into vacant mode. They don't hate him necessarily, but they switch off. I say this because weirdly, he can still get results even after the point where he has lost the dressing room. His logic is that good. So, it goes on to say a little bit more about... so that was an excerpt, and then someone's quoted about how that's going to relate to the England job today. But I think that rings true. That very much rings true for his Chelsea career. If you could see the way it was towards the end, I know he didn't necessarily leave because it looked like he'd lost the players at all. I mean, you weren't in great form, but you never got the impression that he'd lost the dressing room. But going off that, and that's his autobiography, so those are his words that someone's summarising.
Yeah.
So I guess that's something to watch out for. Now, whether this is Thomas Tuchel, the national team manager now. So are we going to see a lot less of the intensity? And maybe that intensity can, be compartmentalized into these little meetups that we have, where it isn't as draining on the players.
Yeah, maybe it's a situation where we all know those people who you can handle for a bit, but and then I can't see you again for a month because
Pep. You couldn't go for a pint with Pep, could you?
oh yeah, could you imagine? Be draining. Like it's like I love you and you're great, but
Yeah.
leave me alone for a bit. And maybe Tuchel's a bit like that. And the thing that is, I actually agree with almost every word of that. And I agree with what you said. I don't think we got to the point with Chelsea that players, although there is a section of Chelsea fans who sort of like to remind everyone that towards the end of Tuchel's reign, I think maybe the ownership dynamic came into it, but the football did take a bit of a negative turn towards the end. It was a little bit painful some games to watch. So maybe maybe those factors had started to play into it. But I do think the lack of time that he's going to have with the players is going to sort of help and hinder. So it's going to help in that his intensity is minimal. It's like you've only got to deal with it for a couple of weeks and then you don't see him again for 3 months. Also, one of Tuchel's biggest strengths was the work he does with certain players. Like Antonio Rudiger is the best example, I think. Under Lampard, he was out the door. He was benched. We were looking at selling him in the January, I think.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't find a buyer and he was just going to rot, basically. Tuchel comes in, and now Rudiger, I would argue, would probably make every team in the world, give or take. I think Rudiger's probably, everyone's got our preferences and this, that, and the other, but if a vote came out that Rudiger was the best centre half on the planet, you wouldn't really find much cause to argue.
He's Real Madrid's main defender. That just goes saying off, doesn't it?
Yeah. So he's another one. The work he did with Reece James, Ben Chilwell looked unbelievable with him. Most of the defenders look great. The attacking players, I think that's a different issue. So maybe that's a sort of a help and a hindrance in that we won't have to deal with him very often, but maybe he won't have the time to do his really good work in that having taken some players and really getting his claws into them.
Maybe we just need a specialist in knockout football, in tournament football. We don't need someone to develop players. That's what the clubs are for. Yeah. We don't need Southgate. We didn't need Southgate or Capello or anyone else to develop, certain players into the perfect right winger or left winger or number 10, whoever you need it to be.
Yeah.
We just need someone to come in and say, guess what, Cole Palmer? You play on the right now because you're the best at it right now. Guess what, Phil Foden? No one knows where the fuck you play, so you sit on the bench until I work it out. Yeah. This is what maybe you need. You just need someone to go, I've got no friends here apart from Harry Kane. I've got no friends here. And this is how it's going to be. Might see Mason Mount back in.
Oh, fucking hell, can you imagine? And that's another thing with Tuchel I think we won't be used to in that I think he will... I'm trying to think how the best to articulate this. I don't think we'll see the Maguires and the Rashfords and the Hendersons. I don't think we'll get that fatigue of certain players. I think he's going to be quite ruthless in that if you're performing, you're in. If you're not, you're out. I don't think we'll see anyone getting in who we don't mostly agree should be in, which is another positive.
I agree with that. So, looking forward then, are England in a better position to win the World Cup now than they would have been, say, Southgate decided to stay on?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I think. I'm maybe jumping the gun a tad because I don't think he even starts until Jan. I don't think his first game's until March sometime.
That's true. Yeah, we've still got Carsley for another 2 games.
Yeah. So maybe jumping the gun a tad. However, you can't tell me that Thomas Tuchel is now not. I don't know who. I must admit, I need to go but run through and see who everyone else has. Can't tell me he won't be the best manager at that tournament based on whoever's now managing. And you group that with the right players, which we have. I don't see how we're not. I don't think our odds have changed. I heard that this morning that we're still the same, pending his first few games. But I think we're comfortably in the conversation to be like, if we don't win the World Cup, it's a disaster. I think Tuchel's that good.
Fair enough.
I think everyone should expect it. I don't know. It's like I said, I'm trying not to use my Chelsea Tuchel lens, but it's impossible because I've seen firsthand what he does. And I've seen how he operates, and I know it works. So I don't know if you're like as an Arsenal fan, if that changes your perception of him as such. I think now we're pretty much favourite with him.
Not at all. The overriding summary of it for me is that whilst yes, we may have got the best in class manager available, it still doesn't make it right to me that we don't have an English manager. It's proving that the St George's Park project is failing because we're not producing high level coaches who are climbing up the Premier League ladder with bigger clubs. Like the managers who we were mentioning on the last episode, Gary O'Neill, bottom of the league, Rob Edwards took Luton down. We're not speaking, bloody Russell Martin, who Liam mentioned, we're not speaking about the best managers. And then the other one,
No.
Eddie Howe, seems to have some sort of black check next to his name. No one can speak to him. Hand tied by the Saudis. So I don't know. So to me, that's failing. You can't go out and get a new goalkeeper from Spain because ours isn't good enough, or we need a left back. So let's go see what Italy are developing right now. So for me, and this might just be pie in the sky dream idea. I know it's not the rules. So yes, England can do what they want. Just my preference personally is that your national team manager should be of your nationality. I don't.
Yeah.
But I don't hate Tuchel, and I think we are in a really good position with him.
Yeah. I think to build on that just slightly, the St George's Park, maybe that's another episode altogether. It depends what the goal was. Was it to produce top players or top managers? Probably both, but on the players front, you'd argue it's probably working. And for all my waxing lyrical about Tuchel and how happy I am about this, I actually do agree with you somewhat. If for no other reason, then it's contradictory to what you say for the players. Like you say to the players, you've got to be either from here or have heritage or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you would apply that rule for the players and not the manager. So I do somewhat agree with you. In an ideal world, we'd have an English coach who takes us all the way, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know what the answer is to this, but we just don't produce managers like that. Like we've never had an English coach. I think you pointed it out. The last English manager to win anything was Harry Redknapp in 2008 for Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And that he probably shouldn't have won that either. And then prior to that, it was who was it? Who was the other one?
Steve McLaren.
Steve McLaren, yeah. Steve McLaren at fucking Borough. So it's like, at what point do we just accept that maybe players were great? Managers, we just don't seem to have we just don't have it like that. And it's like Kenya doesn't really produce a lot of, deadlift champions, but they produce a fucking shitload of marathon runners and they lean into it. And that's their thing. And for whatever reason, I don't know what the science and biology around that is, but that's just what they're good at. So while the rules are what they are, why not just accept that we just don't, our managers aren't good because they're not, and just play to the rules that we have. So, but yeah, I agree with you. I'd love to be pie in the sky. The guy who brings us the next World Cup is, he's waving the St George's cross and, he goes over in his suit of armour and takes it and brings it home triumphantly. But
yeah, preferably from Bolton. That'd help.
yeah. If it's from Horwich, that would be perfect.
Yeah, it does because it's not the rules. Then it's hard to argue against it. But
yeah,
you can't just. Anyway, that's my say on it. I think we will do well under Tuchel. He's very likable. I think the players will like him, and that's probably the most important thing. I think we've got a manager who goes in there with a bit of an aura about him, a bit of mystique, a bit of... He's someone who'll go in there and players will look at and think, well, at least this guy knows what he's doing. He's got the catalogue to back it up. He's got the track record. He's likeable. Done. Let's fucking win for him. Let's win for England.
Yeah.
And he seems to know how to do it. So that's where I sit. He's coming home. Hashtag Football Revolution. The Germany-England alliance has been created.
Yes. we are now strange bedfellows, I think is the term. But it is interesting though. Like we talked about, our thoughts and the way the media's responded. I must admit, I don't know what you think. I've not really been that surprised at what the narrative is. But interestingly, I have two headlines to read for you. And I think this sums it up, and this sums up English press in general. So this is from Sam Wallace, who's the chief football writer at,
Yep.
I think it's the Telegraph.
It is, yeah, big figure, Sam Wallace.
Yeah, he's a fucking hypocrite as well. So if you're listening, Sam, fuck you.
Unless you're a judge at the Football Content Awards.
Yeah, then. Well, I hope that you will award me, Sam, for my journalistic integrity for not just bowing to you.
Oh.
But his headline on the 12th of October, so 4 days ago, could the FA really shoot for the stars and go for Pep Guardiola as England manager? Pointing the six-time Premier League winner would be the most ambitious project for the governing body since the rebuilding of Wembley. That was his thoughts on Pep Guardiola. And 3 days later, almost exactly 3 days later, almost at the time, Sam Wallace, appointment of a foreign manager goes against everything international football exists for. Throwing money at overseas talent reduces the international game to an imitation of club football. The FA should have hired an English coach. And I think that's really damning. And I think that's really poor from him, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Because it's not, it is, don't try and lie and say that it's the fact that he's not English. It's just not the foreigner that you wanted to get the job. You would, if Pep Guardiola would have signed on for England, Dean Ashton, Danny Mills, all these guys who were kicking off about Tuchel would have been creaming their jeans over the and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's wrong because Pep Guardiola's the best manager in the world and arguably one of the best who's ever lived.
Yeah.
So right to be excited about that, but then trying to then paint this under the mask of, oh, it's because he's not English. It's like, well, no, it's because it's not you were happy to accept one foreigner, but not the other. So why not just say you've not got the best manager that you could versus you've got a German? That's I don't like.
And that's where I sit. If it's not an English manager, then at least we've got the best available manager who we could get at the time. My preferences aside, am I happy with it? Let's go 50-50 for now. Wait till the first game when I'm proper buzzing.
Yeah.
So March.
There's going to be big pressure. And also, a lot of these, I'm sure, I did not see a single mention of this when Sarina Wiegman brought a big trophy home with the Lionesses. I did not see a single word.
So there's less. There's a little bit less of the is it xenophobia really? Is that what you would call it? A little less of the hatred against our old rivals.
Yeah. But allegedly this is about it not being English, supposedly. So it's all well and good for the Lionesses to have a foreign manager. And if Sven had won us the World Cup, would we get this is what it comes down to. If we win the World Cup, I think no, it's happening. I'd bet everything on it. I would trust Thomas Tuchel with my life. That's how much I love this guy. If we win the World Cup, this is why I said to Liam and Luke, I don't want to see any celebrations from them. When this happens, because it's a dark day for English football, all this nonsense. Well, when we win it, and Thomas Tuchel, the conquering German, brings it home, lands at Heathrow, fucking lifts the World Cup up. I don't want to see you there cheering. I want to see you, with your handkerchiefs out crying. Oh, it's not what we wanted. It should have been Sir Alf again. No, fuck off. No bets.
That's it. Liam and Luke have gone hard in the group chat about the German taking over. For me, I've stated my preference, but doesn't stop me supporting England. You can't still, like, if someone took over Arsenal who was different from Arteta tomorrow, I'm not going to stop supporting Arsenal. So,
I am very much the Tuchel police, and no Thomas Tuchel slander will be tolerated in my presence. So I will be very harsh in my judgments.
Right. Done. So it's coming home. That's it.
It is. It is coming home. I'm very happy.
While you're here, let's have a look forward. I feel like the Premier League has been gone for years.
Yeah.
It's been absolute. You've got Liverpool this weekend.
We do at Anfield as well.
Start of a bad run of fixtures for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think this is where we're going to really see what this Chelsea team's made of. So we've had the pundits are still split. Everyone thought we were going to be 10th this year. Now we're 4th. So I've seen some backpedaling. But these are, to be fair, other than came up against a big test on day one, lost. And then since then, been some tricky games, but I'd argue that most of those games we probably should have won. Like the Forest game, we should have got a win there, and the Palace game for sure. So probably all games that you'd expect us to win, give or take. So yeah, we've got Liverpool, and then we've got, can't remember the order, but we've got Newcastle, Liverpool. Well, it's Liverpool first, then Newcastle, United, and Arsenal all in a row.
Yeah.
And we've got mixed in there an away day to Panathinaikos, which will be horrible, and we've got to go to Newcastle again in the League Cup. So that's a tough 6 games. So yeah, this is where we see what we're made of and see if what Maresca does against, a much more, I don't even want to say a better manager because I don't really know what Slot's really about yet. So I don't want to judge him too quickly, but a much more established crop of players who are used to playing together. We'll see how he does.
This will arguably be Slot's hardest challenge as well. Since
Yeah,
it's
you're
coming.
right.
So it's Liverpool v Chelsea, so if anyone bets anything other than 0-0, they're a fool.
If it were United, yeah, it's the United game I really want. If we draw or lose to Liverpool at Anfield, it's like, okay, it's not ideal, but you're going to lose some games over the season. So whatever. We've got it, but it's the United, because United's been a fixture where we've historically been pretty poor.
United home or away?
United's away.
Right.
Arsenal's at home. Newcastle in the league's at home.
Yeah.
United's at Old Trafford. I mean, it was an extremely memorable game. One of the best nights at Stamford Bridge, I think, ever, really, when we beat them 4-3 last season. But this has been a horrible fixture. And the performance at Old Trafford last season was... It sent my head to fucking Mars. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And that's where I've said this a lot of times. That's where I turned on Poch then. It was genuinely it was worse than when we got slapped 6-0 by City. Fucking William was walking after everybody. It was abysmal. So that's where I want to see a big result. But yeah, Liverpool this weekend will be very tough. So yeah, have you got an away day as well? I think Arsenal got an away day, haven't they?
Bournemouth away, and then we've got a tricky run of fixtures, starting with maybe Liverpool. I'm not sure. Chelsea's in there. There's a few tough ones coming up for us. But let's start with Bournemouth away at 5:30 on Saturday. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy. We had Saka pulled out of the England squad with something not too serious. He's looking like he's going to be fine. Kai Havertz didn't go with Germany. He's looking like he's going to be fine. Raya and Marino both played one game for Spain. So they're fine. I'm happy everyone seems fine and people are starting to come back from injuries. Martinelli may have took a knock, but we're looking at Sterling's started the last game, so hopefully he can find a bit of form.
Yeah.
And it's Bournemouth where we should be battering them.
Yeah.
They're a decent side, but this is the sort of game you need to just brush aside, and then City play the first game on Sunday against Wolves away, and you just don't need. It's not exactly the hardest game for City, but you don't need to give them any opportunity.
That Wolves team is not as bad as their record indicates, I don't think.
They've had such a ridiculous start to the season.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be anywhere near the bottom. In this time in 10 weeks. By January, I think they'll be well clear. So,
yeah, it'd be a tricky one for City, that, because I think City I don't think they've been that. I mean, the second and the 1 point off the top, so they've not been that bad, but no, they've just not been as convincing as in the first 3 games they were battering everyone. Then I think since the draw with you lot, really, they've not really quite looked as at it. So I don't know if you've got in their heads a bit.
I hope so. Let's just keep it interesting.
Yeah. So actually, are you back in Chelsea this weekend then?
Big time.
If you take some points off Liverpool, that could open up a big door for you.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like no matter how well Liverpool do now, they'll drop off. It's just that new manager bounce will eventually catch up with them. The Premier League's very hard to come in and win in your first season. So with a team
achievement if he did.
With a team who he's not bought anyone, with not your own team at all. It's not even like he's got a couple of his own signings, he's got no one. So it would be a ridiculous achievement. So I'm not too worried about Liverpool, although they do look good. And I think Slot's doing very well right now. Hopefully it starts getting a bit stickier for him. And then I just hope City fail at every opportunity. So Everything keeps marching on. Right, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Let's get this episode put out, and we will catch everyone next week. And don't forget the David Beckham competition. Find all the details at fixingfootballpodcast.com. Thanks, Scott. I will catch you later.
No worries. See you in a bit.